Hello, Peter. Thank you very much for being here. So please. Yes, to the right.
Hello?
Okay. Hi.
There we go.
So please introduce yourself and your company.
Thank you, Mario. Hi, everybody. I'm Peter Stirrett. I head up business development for survey and surveillance applications for Skyports drone services. Really nice to be here today. It's a fantastic opportunity to meet some of the wider UAM and drone community across Europe. So it's been really great meeting some people, some of you today. Bit of background on Skyports. Many of you may know of us from our Vertiport infrastructure business for eVTOL. Business has been around for coming on 5 years now, I believe. Our CEO actually founded the business 5 years ago, coming out of the real estate industry. He recognized, he heard about this new technology, eVTOL for passenger drones, and having been in the real estate industry, recognized this huge opportunity for developing vertiport infrastructure and kind of partnering with big land developers and strategically developing these eVTOL networks for ultra short haul passenger flights using eVTOL. To date, on that side of the business, we're now developing eVTOL vertiports in various locations around the world. And we actually run the helipad at Canary Wharf in London. We bought the helipad there, and we run it as a functioning helipad, and it's really a place for us to get operational experience running a similar type of aviation asset, and also testing out, using it as a test bed for actually testing some of our infrastructure, our technology that we're developing for eVTOL vertiports. I actually, as I said, sit on the drone service side. So how does that fit with the vertiport business? Well, the vertiport business we developed is very related and hinges on the certification and commercialization of passenger drones, which, as we all know, we are steadily moving towards that point. But today, we do not have commercial operations of eVTOLs for passenger drones. And so that's part of the reason. It seemed strategic to launch a drone service business. Also, as a company, we developed a huge network and lots of kind of knowledge and experience in deconflicting airspace and developing beyond visual line of sight networks for the operations of drones, whether they be for completely unmanned or for passenger drones in the future. So for us, COVID, whilst obviously an awful experience for everybody globally, it was also an opportunity for the drone industry. And we launched our first drone service at the start of 2020. It was a project mentioned a little bit, it sounded really loud to me, but thanks for that. We launched our first drone service. It was mentioned earlier on today. Actually, it was delivering kind of COVID samples back and forth between remote island communities.
I think concerning this, we can start the video. Chiedo alla regia di far partire il video, so you can help us go through the video.
Just to tee this off. So I'm actually going to speak about 2 use cases here. The first is going to be using the same drone we used in Scotland. It's the Swoop Kookaburra, and we are flying BVLOS ship-to-shore delivery services, carrying various types of cargo in Singapore, which, if you're not familiar, is the world's second busiest port. So it's a pretty complex environment to be operating drones in. This is our remote command and control center. It's all operated BVLOS. We have personnel at the takeoff and landing location. The drones, we encountered some challenges in kicking off this project, in that when we were first trying to land on the vessels, whilst these huge tankers are seemingly stationary, they are actually obviously moving with the tides, with the waves, etc. So landing the drones on the vessels was a particular challenge, which is why you'll see that we now have these QR codes which the drone latches onto to ensure that it can land on the moving vessel. We've actually been partnered with Swoop, who are the manufacturer of this drone, and have been kind of product developing this particular use case with them.
So this is a similar mission to the one that we saw before, between our vertiport and to the helipad in the port.
Yeah, so flying from the west coast of Scotland, where we have a cargo vertiport, flying out to a hospital, so flying offshore. But in Scotland, it's quite a remote location. The complexity in Singapore is we're taking off in an urban environment, and we are flying out around these vessels. We're also not allowed to fly over large vessels which are not under our command. So again, we have to kind of navigate that process as well.
If I'm not mistaken, this is like an already commercial service that you are doing. So maybe because until now we saw different demonstration missions. So this is a commercial one. Maybe you can
This is a commercial operation, and as you'll see now, I don't actually have any videos for the multi-rotor that we're operating there. But yeah, this is a commercial operation. We are planning next year to develop it further with a just-in-time capability, so the vessel owners and captains can actually use an app to order these deliveries. But as things are currently managed, we work through a ship supply service with Williamson, so they manage that whole process, but it works really well. We chose to operate 2 drone platforms because it gives us really great resilience in the drone operation, so we're not hinged on one particular manufacturer there, so we alternate between the 2 different drones. They also have different payload capabilities, so the Swoop can actually take almost double the payload than the multi-rotor.
Which kind of supply of type of payload they request more? Because yeah. I think there are some cases in which a delivery from drone is much better than another one, and vice versa.
So yeah, essentially we've done some cost and kind of speed analysis, and some of the things we're carrying. My video is way too quick for me to keep up with this, so hopefully you'll take in the content and see what I'm saying. But one of the key use cases has been big vessels have to stop for fuel, and this is called bunkering. So they stop for bunker fuel, but throughout the process they have to take samples to prove that the bunker they're taking, the fuel they're taking on, is not contaminated. And this process, particularly in the world's second busiest
Possiamo
port...
mettere in pausa il video così continuiamo a parlare?
Yeah, could you pause the video?
Yes, can we pause the video? Okay, you go through as well.
Thank you. So I'll talk about that use case. They have to stop for bunker fuel samples, and to prove it's not contaminated, they have to send various samples back to shore. And this takes quite a long time using traditional methods, which is waiting for a service vessel to come out back and forth. You can be waiting hours, if not sometimes much longer than that. It can be affected by rough sea conditions as well. So the drone is, I think, something like 80% faster on average than this, and 50% cheaper than the other method. So what the drone will take the sample back, it will be tested at a kind of a lab back on shore, and on the return, so we're not flying with an empty payload, we've been flying back with things like donuts and McDonald's, which it seems a bit like a novelty, but actually it's a really nice use case because often these crews are on these vessels for months at a time, so it's a really nice bit of welfare for the crew on the vessels. So it's a really nice use case, and it's a commercially viable product, which we're running on a daily basis. We're doing these flights.
So very strong business case as well.
Yeah.
I think we can go on with the second use case. Chiedo alla regia di ripartire con il video. So what are we going to see now?
Yes, so this is also in Singapore. You'll see both of my use cases that I'm talking about today are in Singapore. The regulatory environment there has been very advantageous for operating beyond visual line of sight. We have multiple remote command and control centers around Singapore. This is actually a project in partnership with ST Engineering, who many of you in the aviation space will be familiar with. They're a kind of a global aerospace business. They also have a UAV business as well and have developed this drone-in-a-box technology and also this multi-rotor drone that you saw. This is being used for inspections around inspection and surveillance of the Singapore government's utility network, their reservoir network. So across 9 of the reservoirs storing the city's water, they have these boxes distributed around site. So there's nobody physically at the site. All of the pilots are based in a remote command center. The drone takes off or lands, as you're seeing in this video here, and performs a number of tasks, which we'll see some more information about shortly.
Okay, so I wanted to ask you, since you mentioned that you made the majority of your operations in Hong Kong, in Singapore, so outside Europe. In your experience, what is the difference between regulation here and regulation there, and which are the barriers that maybe here in Europe we have to overcome?
Yeah, so one of the main reasons we've been able to scale commercial BVLOS operations in Singapore is simply that the government are happy for you to operate within certain altitudes. So they've segmented the airspace so we can fly, I believe, and don't quote me on this exactly, but I believe it's up to like 100 meters above sea level. That space is reserved for drones. Obviously, Singapore is quite it's quite a condensed environment in comparison to Europe. In the UK at the moment, we have to, if we want to fly BVLOS, we have to create a temporary danger area, and this approval only lasts for a 3-month period. So if I want to sell a commercial product which relies on beyond visual line of sight flying, I can only sell it for 3 months. So this doesn't work. So I think it's a journey, and at the moment, the way in which we're implementing projects in the UK is more of a kind of a crawl, walk, run approach. So we will actually have people on site as visual observers, as safety pilots, and then we hope to prove that, by capturing enough data, proving that it can be done safely, building a strong enough safety case, that over time we can take that person on site away. The exciting thing is actually you can still find business cases where it is, commercially viable to have that person on site, and there's still significant value to the customer. So whilst we have a big operation in Singapore, it is, we are actively looking at projects in the UK and Europe.
So coming back to the other part of your business in Skyports, which is vertiports. So I know that you already are, let's say, managing a sort of vertiport, but just for helicopters. So how is it going that, and how the lesson that you learn in that case may apply to, for example, future operation of something like a Volocity or another urban air mobility platform?
Yeah. So the helipad we run in London is a very unique operation for us. But actually, I guess in terms of the direct experience we're getting with the vertiports, may have seen on LinkedIn, anyone of you who's on there. But on last week we did an opening of the vertiport just north of Paris, which is going to be operational with Volocopter for the Olympic Games in 2024. And also with Volocopter, we are developing and we're breaking ground and actually building a vertiport in Singapore. And again, with the sort of crossover and learnings from both drone services and the vertiport business back and forth, but we're taking this, again, kind of a walk, crawl, run approach in the vertiport business, in that our first commercial operations of a vertiport are most likely to be in Singapore, and they're most likely to be like tourist flights around the city. So whilst that's not necessarily the end vision for eVTOLs, it's a great starting point. It's a great way to prove that the technology is safe for people who are kind of willing to take on that export. Not safe, but prove the use case, build trust in the technology with the general public, and then you can actually start expanding that into a type of transport. Yeah.
So we can say that vertiports are going to be very important as a ground infrastructure for the development of these new forms of mobility. So how do you think they should be inserting inside the new urban planning? So like, for example, which are the spots inside the city or outside and the critical aspect to consider when planning one place, one location to another?
Yeah. Really good question. So we've actually just hired and have a new starter as a country manager in Japan, and he visited our office in London last week, and he was making a very interesting case because he lives in Tokyo and they have like high-speed rail there, and he showed us a map of Tokyo and was showing us, you know, within an hour you can travel to all of these areas within like almost 100-kilometer radius of Tokyo. So actually, it's really like looking at that, and one of the things that our vertiport business does is builds and maps out networks like bus stops, essentially, for where your kind of ultra short haul flights are going to take place, and what you've got to look for is comparisons against other modes of transport. You know, because we don't want this to be a gimmick. We want this to be something that is truly useful and beneficial to society. That's how it's going to become embedded. Looking for your economic centres, looking at routes which are going to be, you know, currently where the transport links are not necessarily so good, but there's actually strong economic reasons to be travelling between those locations. So, for example, north of London, we're actually developing a vertiport on a kind of an airfield there. Just north of London, it's quite an affluent part area, and it's going to be connecting in to some of the major airports in the region. So again, we want this to be a transport for everybody, but as a starting point, this is you know, looking at those areas where there's a clear business case for it.
Okay, so final question, the future strategy of Skyports, both in drone services market and both in vertiports, how do you see it?
So it's very interesting. We're at this kind of point in our company where we started in vertiports, we now have drone services, and currently the two business units sit quite distinct, separate from one another. But actually, as drone services start to onboard bigger drones, you know, our team have been visiting OEMs in the States who are manufacturing much larger, heavy lift cargo eVTOLs. I see the two businesses growing much closer together, and this really, in time, creating significant value and significant change for how we move both people and goods around our cities, out to remote communities. You know, there's going to be a need for larger drones. There's going to be a need for dedicated and you know, specifically designed infrastructure. Yeah.
Very, very interesting. So I wish you good luck with all of this. Thank you very much for being here today.
Thank you very much, Mario. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter.